driving a relatively high percentage increase each year. And the third is our debt service, for the borrowing that we do that's non-override debt. It's not the bachelor school, it's not the police station, it's not the Smith property. It is, in fact, any other borrowing that we do. So it was the intent of the board to cap the debt service by using this debt stabilization fund so that we didn't grow the amount of fixed costs that we had to take out of our new revenue each year to fund our fixed costs. That money then could be forwarded into the town and school municipal budgets. So in October, we put the $404,000, $250 into the debt stabilization fund, which was the payment we received in fees from the building of the Berry property. There was an agreement on fees. They put up $125 initially early, and we took the $300,000 we got from the state as an incentive fee and used that to pay for the extra inspection services required for that enormous facility that's being built. So this money came in from the fees and it went into the debt service. We received, as Representative Jones mentioned, that we received $531,000 thanks to his efforts in our share of the sale of the Berry property, less the state's percentage of the cost of making the sale. And that came to the town. We have that money. It's not free cash yet because we received it this year, and you can't use it until it's certified. And it's the intent, it was the intent at least, to put it into the stabilization fund this coming October. And if you go back and remember the presentation I made, in fact, in fact, this is the slide. Next October's town meeting, we get for using the 40-hour smart, adopting 40-hour smart growth, we got $3,000 from the state per living unit, a total of $1.218 million. That money hasn't been received yet. Checks in the mail, and that money is also slated for the debt stabilization fund, which means that if you go through the numbers, we could leverage $7 to $9 million roughly, depending on how we allocated the money, in borrowing and maintain a level debt payment service going out to the future. And this is significant because many of the things that we need to do that we keep putting off in the capital areas are going to be funded from this resource. And that's why there's reluctance from the board to say, well, it's easy to take $531,000 and apply it to our operating budget. But it's a one-time thing, and when it's gone, the following year we got a bigger hole to make up. Doesn't make sense. Okay? I just wanted to cover that. And at this point, I'm going to open it up to the board to discuss the proposals on the table. Do we want to, do you want to hear from each department?
Yeah,
okay.
I would like to hear.
Okay, so let's start with recreation. Who's representing recreation? Mrs. Mullen, how about over here?
She lost.
Yeah. Okay. You can have my cheese.
Oh. My name is Rita Mullen, 163 Chestnut Street. I'm the current vice chairman of the recreation. Was once recreation department, and I figured it would be appropriate that I would stand under an empty basket here, because if things go the way it could tonight, we could be very empty, and I'm going to try to at least fill part of it back up, if not all of it. It certainly won't be a slam dunk, but I'll give it my best shot. The Recreation Committee met in November, and we finalized the balanced budget and passed it in December 2007. Along with the balanced budget, we also were recommending that we add a part-time administrative assistant to our part-time one we had and make it a full-time position that we would pay for. Recreation has agreed to pay for this position out of our revolving fund. We would do this by shifting $28,000 we receive in our expense column line item and shifting approximately $20,000 to our personnel department so that it wouldn't cost the town anything. We've asked through the budget process this for 5 years, and for 5 years, the finance and selectmen had to say no because of the position we were in. Finally, Recreation took themselves in a position that they didn't have to ask the town for any money, that we would say we get the money through our revolving fund and pay for this position for a department that has grown significantly, although at no cost, extra cost to the town. We have added more recreation classes for tots, elementary school children, teen programs, and adult classes. We have coordinated better with the schools on recreation and park programs, borrowing space from anywhere we could to run programs that were affordable, giving a great quality for a very fair price. We have run trips for our senior citizens, which they have participated in, which they never had before, on short trips, and they're ready to sign up again. We have run barbecues, wine tastings, events, walkathons, and golf tournaments every year for the past 11 years, putting that money back into the cachet of the Hillview Commission to the tune of $375,000 raised by the Recreation and LUC and the people that volunteer to come to our programs. This has required recreation that help keep up the development of our gym, Ipswich River Park, which attracts more people year after year and requires more maintenance year after year, and yet looks better today than the day it was built. We have added more infrastructure to our fields. We have maintained them better. Before, we've worked with the DPW and the schools and the leagues on every one of our collaborative projects. All this has been done at the expense of the leagues and recreation, and we have still not come back and asked the town for money. And year after year, recreation has passed a little bit more back to the town. We have run our enterprise fund and our revolving fund like a business. In the better years, we do more on the fields to upgrade them, and the leaner years, we do as much as we can with the monies we have. We have partnered with leagues where they have paid up to $10, $20, and currently $50,000 to complete projects on Chestnut Street and Ipswich River. This is how we do business with a great volunteer group, fundraising group like Parks and Rec and the LUC, the volunteers that help us, and a dynamic and energetic and selfless staff from the Parks and Recreation Department, in which they have continued to give more and more of themselves each year. As a business, someone like the Hillview Commission, it runs its business and keeps money in its enterprise fund. So if when you have a bad year, you can still pay the mortgage. Ours is the same. We have allowed our revolving fund to raise $160,000 this year, and this money has already been earmarked for $50,000 for Parks and Recreation portion of the $100,000 project to complete a joint recreation and soccer project, and field renovation for safety, drainage, and long-term stability of the Chestnut Street fields, so they won't have to be closed as often as they have been. We have worked with the Hillview Commission and Land Utilization Committee to upgrade the Wheeler House at Ipswich River, part of our Phase 3 project. We've committed approximately $50,000 for that, and the work is supposed to start soon. We've committed approximately $15,000 more for resurfacing at IRP, the skating and tennis courts. This leaves us with a remaining balance of about $45,000 in our revolving fund. There's still other items to be done. We had intended to pick up $20,000 a year this time, which is half that person, and put it back into the fund. That would leave us with about $25,000 remaining, the lowest we've had in probably 20 years of recreation. We've tried to be self-sufficient, as we can still offer more programs to the citizens of North Reading. This past year of 2007 and 2008, the schools trying to add services back to the students that had programs cut. They even cut into our recreation type of after-school programs. This is not a knock on the school, it's survival, and they have to do what they have to do to try to give things back to the elementary school. But this is it for everybody to stay afloat. Again, these programs are costing families of school-aged children $60 to $100 for an 8-week session per child. And if any one of you has just one kid in your family, you're very lucky. We still volunteer and split services with other departments and leagues, but it would not be prudent, wise, or sensible to kill recreation by $45,000. This would be a 28% reduction to one of the smallest budgets in town. We feel the town would be skimming money off the top of a small organization in town that has worked efficiently within a very small budget supplied by the town for the last several years. If the Hillview has laid the golden egg, then recreation is a chip that hatched, and you would be frying it safely. Several months ago, the Parks and Recreation Committee voted to raise our user fees from $15 to $20 per person, which would bring us, in some of our program rates, which would bring us approximately $18,000 more to cover our expenses, cost of living, and minimum wage earning, of which our programs are based on hourly pays. This fee is in addition to $75 to $250 fees the parents of school-age children playing hockey, softball, baseball, football, and all the Little League and all the programs in town. So to raise our fees an additional $25 to $45 or $50, or possibly $100 extra per sport, depending on what it was, per child, I think is extremely imbalanced. Considering our relationship with the leagues, that they pay nearly an additional amount to capital projects in Parks and Recreation that we never bring to the town under capital expenses. We just pick it up and we absorb it. My suggestion is maybe we should stop picking on the little fish at this time. Let's look at the big picture. It's a very murky tank right now, I understand. Our townspeople need these programs in the leagues. They don't take it only so that they can afford it, but those are the only ones that can participate, the ones that are in the higher echelon of the town. It needs to be affordable for everyone. We need to treat recreation as a business. We can bring in revenues if we stay strong within our budget. If you pick your part or you price our programs higher than the market will be at, you'll take an invisible, viable business and you'll run it into the ground. Worst case, if we had to, if we looked at other options like other towns do, we could run all this leagues under recreation. That would be an enormous project. We still do it with the volunteers we have. You may think you're making some extra money, but you're in fact turning it back and giving it to the leagues. We feel it's a very good balance for the towns the way it is now, that recreation helps support the leagues and the leagues help support recreation. I'm asking you this time to treat out recreation like a business, keep it healthy and viable, and hopefully we'll be able to bring revenues back to the town, which hopefully this year will be the time we were talking about bringing revenues in instead of looking at cuts. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Library, I see no one here.
Stand here.
Wherever you'd like. It would be better to be in the middle here. We have to apologize. The podium is down the other room. We don't have a lot of amenities here, but at least we permitted everybody to participate.
Good evening. I have to say this comes, I didn't know about this cut until about an hour ago.
This is not a cut yet.
So
These are just
I wasn't
proposals.
prepared for this number. I was prepared for a possible cut of something smaller. I don't know if you know about losing certification for a library in this state. There are state regulations, and what happens is that, and we're now a part of the Merrimack Valley Library Consortium. You wouldn't be able to use any of the libraries. There's 35 of those libraries, and most likely none in Noble, which is the other. There might be an occasional library in the state that would allow you to take out books, but by and large, really frown upon. And it's the town, it says library certification, but it is actually the town that uses the certification and has to go through the process of that. You couldn't take out books from other libraries. You wouldn't be able to place holds on the computer for books from other libraries. The collection, which I'm really quite proud of because our librarians worked very hard to select books and just kind of stay where it is and be frozen. I feel there's a real connection between the public library and the schools in any town. And we really wouldn't be available for the students. One of the regulations is that we wouldn't be allowed to apply for grants. We've received a couple of grants in the last few years, and we just received a small one for $5,000, which is actually going to go towards young people, teens and tweens, for programs and more materials. And the other thing about the decertification process is that it takes 3 years to get reinstated. And if you cut this much this year, I mean, how long? I don't see next year being any better. How long before you could get back even the minimal standards? And I would say the state standards are very low because right now we're open 45 hours a week. When I first came here, we were open 51, including Sundays and Wednesday evenings, and those have been cut. And it has been suggested that we cut back to 40. When when the librarians and I start talking about what that would mean, I mean, you have to cut another night or half a Saturday or an afternoon. I mean, And that's the minimum standard. So I realize that those are really quite low. I don't know if you're familiar